Good evening and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk here on your local TV station, KZGN. I'm Al Huey along with my partner, Robert Eierman. And our special guest tonight is City Council member Jim Sanders. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in again.
Glad to be here.
We'll talk about a couple of things tonight on the show. Just to let the people know, we're going to talk about the city budget and the GSAs, which if you were watching or attended last night's city council meeting, was discussed at the council meeting. But let's get on the city budget first.
Sure.
Other than what was presented 2 weeks ago, I guess, at the last city council meeting of last month, how do you think the budget is going with what was presented to the council?
Yeah, and actually, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at that meeting.
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
You were absent.
But
you did see the packet, right?
Yeah. So I'm glad that they presented the budget. You know, we've definitely had some rocky history with the budget. I think for the entire time I've been on the city council.
Even before you got there.
Even well before too. That's right. So no, I mean, it's it's a. Well, I guess what specifically is your question? What do you want?
Well, does it look like that we're going to be able to stay within the budget?
Yeah, I think we will be able to. Yeah, we're going to live within the budget, and that's why we do these budgets, is to make sure we live within our means, and don't spend more than we take in.
Now, the finance director that is in there, Tolly? Staley?
No.
Staley.
Staley.
I think
I'm sorry,
yeah.
forgive me. Is he just an interim director?
He's interim right now.
Or
Yeah.
is the city going out to hire somebody?
So the process is he's interim for 6 months. At most, I think it's no more than 6 months. The city manager is going to do another hiring process, and I'm sure he's going to be one of the applicants. But we're going to be accepting more applicants as well. That's what I've been told. So
Okay. In some respects, we were fortunate to get him on such short notice.
yes.
So.
He came. Yeah, he came at a very good time with the appropriate background. So it was very helpful at the time. Yeah.
I noticed that I think it was at last council meeting, one before 2 weeks ago, or whatever it was. The approval was given for the expenditure of money for the new financial system and for hardware to support it.
Yeah.
Do you know when that's going to arrive and be in place?
You know, I don't. That's a good question.
Okay.
I don't. And I think that was also at the last meeting that I missed.
Yes, it was. Sorry to catch you off guard there, but
That's okay. That's okay.
And during that meeting, I found it interesting. There was discussion relative to should there be monthly reviews of the budget. And interestingly enough, it was one of those rare circumstances where Mayor Breeden and Al Huey were in agreement.
Ah, wow.
And it was even commented on that the following Saturday in the DI editorial. And they mentioned that, interestingly enough, they were in agreement, but they also expressed their opinion. The newspaper's opinion was that, yes, there should be monthly reviews. And although all the information isn't necessarily accurate, some of it is based upon projections and so on and so forth, at least it keeps you, the council, informed as to the up-to-the-minute goings-on.
Absolutely.
Clearly you weren't there. My question is, what's your opinion? Should we have monthlies?
I would be thrilled with monthly updates on the budget. If we can't do monthly, at least bi-month, every other month. I think even that would be better than what we have now.
Monthly.
Monthly would be great.
I asked the finance director how long it took him to pull that report together to give to the council, and he said 2 hours.
Right.
2 hours out of the month.
We should be able to do that every other council meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Or yes.
Yeah. No, that would be great. And the reason that I would like to see that is the sooner if there is a deficit, things change, revenue's not coming in the way we need, expected it to. The sooner we know to make changes, the better off we are. And if we've been running in a deficit because revenue fell way too low and we didn't know about it for 3 months, well, all of a sudden we have to make much deeper cuts than we would have had to if we had been able to know that well in advance and to make those cuts early on.
Right.
What did you think about, speaking of revenues, what one of the comments at the podium last night regarding TOT?
I was just going
That
to
they
say.
did a research by Freedom of Information and went back, 3 or 4 years?
3 years, I think.
3 years, and it hadn't changed. And that included last year when it was claimed that we had 4,000 visitors during the month of November.
Right. Well, I would be very interested to see that, but I think more than anything, we need to perform that internal audit. And I think we keep throwing the word audit around. I think that's getting confused, particularly with staff. I don't think anybody wants to hire an external firm or something to actually perform a quote unquote audit. We just want to get the information. We just want to get the information from the hotels, get their.
Well, if they've been misleading the city for 3 years, what makes you think that they would be forthcoming with any kind of audit if you allow them to do it?
Well, right now I'm not even sure we're just getting that basic information, So
and it may be accurate. It just seems odd to me, and clearly, obviously, to Al, that with 4,000 visitors in town last November, and of course we're going to have the same thing this year, hopefully, or maybe even more, that there wouldn't have been an increase in TOT tax for 2014 over 2013.
Yeah. One of those numbers is wrong. Yeah, they have to be. Yeah.
Right. Or they didn't have all the data and they just submitted information based on data that they had, but it wasn't accurate. All we're saying is that somebody, I think, needs to question that and say, could you explain? And maybe there's a perfectly good explanation. Who knows? Maybe
I doubt it.
Maybe during the rest of the months, hotel usage was way down, and the Petrichor Festival just brought it back up to what it had been.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have to take a break.
Oh,
We'll be back in just a few seconds. Join us on the other side while we allow our advertisers to pay the bills here.
And welcome back to segment 2 of Thursday evening Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with Al Huey, and our guest tonight is Councilman Jim Sanders, and we're discussing the budget and things associated with that.
Now, again, you weren't there 2 weeks ago when they gave the presentation of the budget update anyway. One of the things that I brought up during public comment, and I don't know if you were aware, but I worked for the government for 38 years.
On the base?
Well, no.
Oh, I didn't know.
I worked down at George Air Force Base and then transferred up here.
Okay.
Was with the Federal Aviation Administration for the last 17 years.
Oh, okay.
He's the one that caused all those crashes. I mean, make sure that we had all the equipment up and running so that there wasn't any problems.
One thing I experienced, particularly with the FAA, because when I was at George Air Force Base, we didn't really have access to any computers. Mm-hmm. But up here I did. And particularly during the transition from DOS to Word, or not Word,
Windows.
but Windows, we had a lot of software programs that were a pain in the butt, okay? I mean, really labor intensive.
Yeah.
And even after that for some period of time because programs didn't work as advertised. My point being, and I brought it up at the council meeting, is I couldn't just say, well, screw it, I'm not going to use this, I'm going to go off and do this my own way.
Right.
But that's essentially what happened with the finance director before she departed. She didn't like the software, so she went another route. And it turns out, in part, that's where the discovery of the shortfall of the budget was when somebody was able to work that software and discovered that shortfall.
Yeah, that's correct.
My point being, if I had done that when I was working for the government, I would have really been in big trouble. But it appears the city manager didn't have a problem with that individual not using that software and more or less condoned it, as long as some work was done, is what it appears like.
Yeah, the rationale for that was that we were planning on buying a new software system very quickly. At the time, even like back in, when did I get on, 2012? That's when we were planning on buying a new software system. So the rationale was, well, why learn this really difficult software system that has a really high learning curve when we're just going to get a new system anyways? And all that knowledge is going to be worthless anyways. Well, it turns out we couldn't buy it that year, so we put it off another year. Couldn't buy it that year, we put it off another year. So that was
So you're
never...
admitting it was a mistake for them not to learn that system.
Well, hindsight's 20/20,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if we knew today that we wouldn't have, or then that we wouldn't have been able to buy a new software system till today, I'm sure Dennis Spear would have said, you need to learn this system. But we honestly didn't expect to be working on a Band-Aid for 3 years. Nobody did. So
And it was just...
I can see how that happened. I mean, there was no ill intent, no lack of planning. It just was circumstances that overran the situation.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate,
It's
but
very unfortunate.
But at least there's a reasonable explanation.
Right. So
Al disagrees with me, but okay. Nothing new.
If I was running the store, I wouldn't have accepted that.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean,
You know, it's not an issue that, oh, we had a hiccup, no big deal. We'll make some adjustments and get around it. We're talking about the city finances here.
Yes, no, you're right. It's not an insignificant
Right.
point. And maybe when 6 months went by and 9 months went by and you weren't able to get it, maybe some other course of action should have been chosen. But I can just see them saying, well, but it's only 3 months away and we'll have it. And it just got to be a pretty bad situation, clearly.
it did. It just kind of accumulated into from a bad situation to a really bad situation. So.
A question would be, what would have been said if instead of $700,000, that's the number about, right?
700,000. Yeah.
If instead of 700,000 short, we were 700,000 long, would we be throwing as big a rocks?
That's true. That's true.
If that was the case.
That's a fair point.
And they didn't know that because they were using not the quote approved system.
That's true.
Right.
But with the city finances so close to the belt,
Yes, I hear. I
the
understand.
likelihood of that happening is pretty slim.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and we had a land sale that we voted on last night. My hope is that any revenue that we get from that goes into a reserve, because we need to keep a buffer there.
Oh, absolutely.
So that we don't have to go through this kind of thing again.
Yeah.
So
That's another point. A few council meetings back, I brought up in the consent calendar where there were items in there of the city working with some contractor for some project, and there was no money associated with it. And I brought up it would be nice for the city, for the public to know how much is being spent. And
$1 million here, $1 million
Yeah.
there. Whatever.
And
What was this
anyway, the
for?
council agreed with me and directed the city manager to make that adjustment in the budget in the future, or in the agenda in the future. And then last night, you're talking about the sale of, was it sale of property, or it was purchase of property, if I understood it?
Well, the city was selling the property. The city was part owner in the property. So we were actually selling the property.
What is it, an easement or something they were selling back to the property owner?
Well, there was a couple different things. So the last, I think it was the last item on the agenda, second to the letter, was we were selling some properties in the business park over by Channel Lake Boulevard. 3 different parcels to one person who's purchasing them. So some of that revenue actually goes to the city. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I misunderstood because I thought it was the city purchasing some kind of easement, and it made it sound like the city was going to be paying an annual fee to the property owner for the use of that easement.
That was a different item. Yeah, we also purchased an easement there, but it was, I think that's just a one-time purchase.
Oh, it's not an annual?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And that gets back to the word.
Yes.
What was it? Dedicate?
Dedicate.
Right.
That's kind of confusing, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is.
When we come back, we got to take a break right now. Let's
can
talk
talk
just a
about
little
that.
bit more about that when we come
Sure,
back.
sure.
Join us on the other side while we take a break here for the cause.
And welcome back to our final segment of Ridgecrest Talk here on Thursday evening. I'm Robert Eierman, along with Huey, and our special guest tonight, Councilman Jim Sanders, and we're talking budget, and we're going to get into GSA, and maybe even into your support for Donald Trump. But anyway, I had to throw that in. Anyway.
Talk all night about that.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to.
The point that Al was trying to make was the word dedication relative to property is certainly not very familiar to many people, including myself, including Al.
I asked you last night.
Yeah, and I go,
Yeah.
So just a suggestion, and I can't believe that all of the council members knew right off the top of their head what that meant. But if we could convince the city manager to put in a little bit of an explanation so that we don't have the audience all asking each other, what the heck is going on? And in fact, we had that question from the audience. What's that mean?
It holds up the meeting because then
Yes.
you got anybody wants to pull a consent item.
We have to pull the whole item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To ask a question.
To ask
Yeah.
a simple question.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. And that's, I think that goes along with transparency, the goal that we all want. And it's
Right.
just something that I guess I hadn't really thought of till now, but that's an excellent point. Just put some explanations in there, just something to make sure everybody can understand what
Right.
those definitions are.
You just have to be aware that not all of us citizens are aware of all the terms that
Yeah.
are familiar to you guys.
And I think that's just something that, each expert in our own fields, we take advantage, take that for granted, that not everybody understands our own language that we
Right.
speak within our expertise.
It's not quite an acronym, but
Right.
it's approaching it.
But in
Yeah,
that
right.
context,
Right.
it's what I would consider an unusual word to use.
Yeah,
And it doesn't really fit with going to dedicate, huh?
right.
So let's move on to the GSAs.
Yeah, that was on the council agenda last night with respect to responding to an inquiry by the county Board of Supervisors as to whether or not the city wanted to participate in the upcoming GSAs.
Yes.
That's the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which all parts of the state have to have in place by 2017.
Correct. Yeah.
And I thought, what's his name? Stan
Rittora.
Rittora brought up a good point when he was when public comment came around, in that the response from the city should be, as everyone agreed, yes, absolutely, we want to participate.
Yeah.
But the county was asking how you want to participate. What part do you want to play?
That was a very good comment from
Yeah,
him. Yeah.
and we need to let the county know, well, we want to be a voting member of the GSA.
Yes. Yes, we want to have a seat at the table. We want to have a vote along with everybody else. So,
Right.
Yeah.
You agree with that, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely,
think
yeah.
every single council person agreed with that.
Yeah. So we made that change in the letter
Yes.
and brought that in.
Has the
yeah.
council talked about, is it going to be just one council member, or would this be a rotating thing where each member would get an opportunity to participate?
We haven't really had that discussion yet. No. My guess is it'd be very similar to how we participate in the League of California Cities. We vote amongst ourselves to
You have
dedicate
a primary
one.
and an alternate. Usually.
Right. Yeah. So that we always have a vote there. So.
Okay. Any idea from the city on their ideas on what they hope to accomplish with being a member of this GSA?
Well, I mean, it's to help guide policy and to make sure that things are done to protect the interests of the city. Really, I mean, it's going to be.
Well, when you say protect the interests of the city, can you broaden that a little bit?
Sure. So, I mean, for example, if there are fees or something like that imposed to try to bring in water, or I mean, let's just say, for instance, we're going to import water. We found somebody who's going to sell it to us, and we have a conduit and everything. Magically, that happens. Well, that's going to have to get paid for, so we have a vote in saying, we're going to set the fees at this level to make sure that's fair and reasonable for everybody. We're not going to set those fees too high because, by the way, this source of water is also cheaper, and we can substitute that way. Or, I mean,
any idea, just
it's
off
gonna
the
be-
top
it's-
of your head, where you might be able to get access to water that's, close by?
Geez. Well, I
that
mean,
might be running in a pipe.
yes, the
just
LA
west of
aqueduct.
town?
I mean, that would be ideal. That's a very uphill battle. I mean, it's
I don't know.
it's doable. I think it is doable. It's realistic.
The state
But that's very
declared us,
difficult.
in serious overdraft.
Yes.
Critical.
Yes.
Critical.
It's
The state could say LA,
Yeah.
put a T in the line.
I've had some talks with the water district who's been looking into that pretty heavily, and it just sounds like it's kind of a long process.
Oh, I'm
And
sure it is.
It's very political,
But
and
it's
it's
certainly
very
more doable today than it would have been 3, 4,
Oh,
5
no.
years ago.
I agree with that.
Actually,
Absolutely.
I want to share some information. Back in 1993, the Meads had agriculture property that was going to be purchased by LADWP, and there was a negotiation where they would use that property to bank water from the aqueduct, and with the understanding that at some point in the future, if water was needed, they would provide us with that water.
Oh.
And at that time, the city council, I think most of them jumped up on the dais and pounded their feet and said not only no, but double HEL no. And so we had an opportunity. I'm not saying that they should have had better foresight. I'm just saying that. But how about if we get water out of the aqueduct and use the money that we pay for that to build, put into a fund to later build a desalination plant for LA?
Yeah. Things like that can be done. The most important thing I want to see out of the GSA is them do an accurate and complete survey of the aqueduct as it is right now, so that we have much better information
Well, there's still two
to make
opinions
decisions
out
off
there.
of.
Yeah.
There's
I
too
know.
much debate going on. We
and
don't
guess
have
what,
good
folks?
enough
We're out of
answers.
time. We didn't get a chance to talk with Councilman Sanders about Donald Trump, but next time we'll do that.
Next week.